What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Action Show. I'm your host, Stizzle Speaks. Happy Monday. I'm really excited to be here this morning. We have an amazing guest today that's going to talk about the apparel business. So I'm excited to get with Shalana to talk about how she started her HBCU legacy fashion brands and where she is today and how she earns her income doing something that she loves. So, Imperfect Action Show, we talk to 6, 7, 8-figure entrepreneurs about their journey, some strategies that they learned, some challenges that they had, and we bring this to the audience so we can learn and grow together as entrepreneurs. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Stizzo. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. So talk to us. Tell us a little bit about you, where you from, and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I'm originally from North Carolina, but I live in Columbus, Ohio. I study journalism, mass communication at the best HBCU on the planet, North Carolina A&T State University. So Aggie Pride, if you're an Aggie listening right now. And when I was at A&T, I pledged Alpha Kappa Alpha, Sorority Incorporated. I was a part of the theater. I did internships in radio and television. BET was one of my internships, marketing. And when I graduated from college, it was 2008, so economy was really bad. Wasn't quite sure what I was going to do because at the time I thought I was going to be a news reporter. So I had this resume reel and I was sending it all out. Nobody was hiring. So I ended up going back to school. I went to grad school and I was studying elementary education. I thought I wanted to get into that because I did like kids. Both my grandmas were teachers. My mom was a teacher. And I was like, no, this isn't for me. So it took me a little while to figure out like what was for me, even though I always knew the things that I really loved, but I was afraid that I couldn't really reach those goals. They seemed so far-fetched. And so I just, started taking different paths, ended up getting married, having children, coming to Columbus. And I really, before I got to Columbus, I started a wedding planning business. So I did that for 10 years and did destination weddings. And so in 2019, I had this idea to start a clothing line for HBCU kids, but I wanted something a little bit more than just a line of t-shirts and onesies. I wanted it to kind of mimic a Baby Gap or Gap Kids or Justice for Girls or Remember Limited 2 when we were kids, something like that. But I wanted it to represent HBCUs. Everyone used to tell me how cute I would dress my kids. And they would ask, like, where did you buy their little clothes from? So I was like, well, what if these clothes were made for HBCUs? So I ended up calling my alma mater to figure out how to become licensed. And I didn't do it that year in 2019, but I always say that the vision is for an appointed time because then 2020 came, pandemic hit. I was actually pregnant with my third child when I remembered that, hey, what about that idea you had to start this HBCU legacy fashion brand? You should start that now. You're at home, you're about to have a third child. And so I remember running downstairs that morning to find the application because I said, I had that application from last year. It was in my desk drawer. The night before, my kids had been playing in my office and they had papers everywhere. But when I got downstairs, I looked on the floor and the application was right on top of that pile of papers. So it felt like this is a now or never type of thing. And it really was because we all know that 2020 was the gift and the curse for Black people. So much tension, racial tension, and the George Floyd and all those things were happening. But at the same time, it's bringing a light to Black businesses and HBCUs. And so I always tell people, like, if I would have started that business in 2019 versus when I started it in 2020 and launched then, I wouldn't have received the grants that I did receive. And I would have had the same types of opportunities that I did get with starting HBCU legacy fashion then. So I know that was kind of a long background, but
that's good. A lot of great information in there. So I mean, let's unpack it. Like that was all great. So starting out, you go to an HBCU yourself, right? You got that. Like for me, I look at my past, like I went to a predominantly white school, and like in retrospect, my life would have been a little bit different had I went to an HBCU, but I come from a place, I'm from Boston, right? So Boston itself is a little racist still to this day, a lot, right? And so I didn't know any better, but now fast forward, a few of my friends that went to HBCUs, graduated, had a great time. a different perspective on life overall.
Yeah.
And there's a certain sense of pride that comes with going and attending an HBCU, in addition to either pledging a sorority or fraternity, right? So I look at HBCU legacy fashion, having that branding is like your love mark, right? You're leaving a love mark forever. So when you have this idea, something that you said, which I think is incredibly impactful, is your vision is always going to be your vision. It's all about timing.
Yes.
It's all about timing. And so the fact that, like, for you, third child, going to your office, the papers right on top, like it was meant to be. So let's peel it back a little bit. When you went to submit that application, like, what was your thoughts in your mind? Were you like, okay, I know I can do this? Or did you have an idea how you were going to do it? Or were you going in kind of blind and being like, you know what, I'm just going to take a risk?
Yeah, so when I went in to do the application, my mindset was I cannot go back to work. So I'm about to have 3 kids because I had 2 under 2 before. And so I was just so motivated to make sure that this business worked, and I got it off the ground as quickly as possible before this baby came. He was due in September. He didn't come till October, like 5 days later. And I was like, I can't have 3 kids in daycare. I got to figure this out. I always knew all my life I wanted to be an entrepreneur, work for myself. And I was like, okay. And so I've tried different things, but then sometimes they would fail. And I said, but I've got to make this one work. And so when I went in to do that application, I saw all of the things that it required. I was like, this is why people just be making stuff and they don't really get licensed because you had to submit your marketing plan, your business plan, your financials, samples of the clothing, just so many things that you had to submit. But I was determined to do it. And so when I tell you, I got all that stuff done within like a week. I even contacted a trademark attorney. I made sure I had the LLC, everything you could think of, the website, I got the domain, all within that week. And I was like, okay, I'm starting this business and I'm not wasting any time. The thing that took the longest for me was probably maybe like the business plan, and then you had to have submit an order, all these other things. But one of the things that took the longest was the manufacturing, because we were in the pandemic, and trying to find a manufacturer was incredibly hard at the time. People don't really like to share who their manufacturer is. Mm-hmm. And for me, I don't care. For me, I've always been the type of person who's like, what's for me is for me. It's like, you can't take anything away from me. So I don't care. I'll tell you who my manufacturer is. I don't care. And so I was like that when I did wedding planning. When people in the wedding industry would ask me questions, and I'm like, yeah, it's not for me. I don't feel like I'm in competition with anyone. So, but it was hard to find a manufacturer because people didn't want to share who their manufacturer was. And so my husband was talking to me about, he's a youth pastor in the city, and he's always had someone here make shirts and everything and stuff for him, sweatshirts. And he's like, well, Dina might know of a manufacturer. She just retired from Justice. Their corporate office is here in Columbus. And she was like a VP in fashion merchandising for like 30 years. And I was like, why didn't I think of that? So I ended up contacting her. And she's like, oh, yeah, I'll introduce you to the manufacturer who I used to work with when I worked at Justice. I used to travel there for, over 20 years. I would travel back and forth to make sure they were in compliance. So she introduced me, and they became my manufacturer. And she actually became like a great mentor to me. She helps me with all my fashion tech packs whenever I need to do a fitting. So that's one thing. It's like the stuff is custom made. So I go through the whole process, and people are like, well, how does it fit? I'm like, I use real people and real children to make sure that it's custom fit. So whenever we, sketch up a design or whenever we make a tech pack with all the specifications in it, we get a fit model after we get the sample in, and we make sure the measurements are correct. So yeah.
I love that. And that's a good point with the gatekeeping. So I don't know if you follow Justin P, but he actually started this apparel line for HBCUs way back when. And he now on his Instagram, as of recently, he's doing a course, or he may have done it this past Thursday actually, but he was releasing all the manufacturers for different major brands. But super intelligent. So like when you talk about mentors, how important was it for you to have a mentor? And do you look at someone like a Justin P in terms of like figuring out, what's the best, manufacturer to use, or kind of concepts and ideas specifically for HBCU, knowing like he has a little bit of background there?
Oh gosh, it was incredibly important for me to have a mentor, especially because I didn't have a fashion degree, no fashion background at all. I love fashion. And even when I was a kid, I remember saying I want to be a fashion designer one day. I was like in third grade saying that because I've always liked fashion. But I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what a tech pack was. I don't know how to measure nothing and do all that stuff. Like, so I would have been lost thinking that I could have done it on my own and just ordered a sample and gotten it in from overseas. It would have been a hot mess. But having a mentor in any field, whether or not you are experienced, someone who's smarter than you in that field, you should definitely consider. And yes, Justin and Corey, I've been following them for a while too. And I bought their courses, their ebooks, and they are very generous with their information. So if you are in fashion, I would definitely look to them as well and look into some of their courses because they're amazing. Yes.
And what is a tech pack? Because now that you said it, I'm like, when you said, I'm like, I don't even know what that is. So anybody who's watching, you're interested in starting, a fashion brand. What is a tech pack? What is that comprised of?
So it's basically the breakdown of the design. So it's like it'll have like a picture of the design. It'll have like all of the measurements, like what's the length of the sleeve, and in here what's the length, and what type of material is going on top of here. And so it has every little detail up there so that when you send it off to the manufacturer, they know exactly how to create the product. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, learn something new every day. And now going back to the why, for this brand in particular, were your children a big part of the why as to why you created it? Because I know it's a children-based brand in terms of the clothing. So were they part of your why, or was this like a concept where you just really thought, wow, I have kids, I know I went to the HBCU, I would want them to wear my clothing? Or was it thinking on a larger scope? Because like for me, my mind was blown when I saw it, because it's something that like the average person wouldn't think about putting the kids in the alma mater because they're children, right? But it's so smart and it's so strategic because there's a lifelong benefit into your name, a legacy behind that.
Yeah. So a combination of a few different things. Definitely my children being one of those inspirations. I remember my oldest son, he's 6, and I remember him getting something that with a little Aggie logo on it, a type of onesie. And so I was like, oh, this is cute. I should make some baby clothes one day. I can make some really nice ones. I have some good ideas. So it kind of sparked from me having kids, but also because I am on my father's side. My father passed away when I was a month old, so he didn't raise me, but his sister did. So on his side of the family, we have a lot of HBCU graduates. So my grandmother, she kind of paved the way. She went to Shaw University in Raleigh, which Shaw, we call in the HBCU world, we call it Mother Shaw, because she, a lot of colleges came out of Shaw, North Carolina A&T being one of them. And so, and then I had family members to go to Fayetteville State. A lot of the colleges were in North Carolina, Fayetteville State, A&T, Winston-Salem State, and North Carolina Central. That's our rivalry. But that one too.
Y'all watching.
So it's like, I wanted to be able to extend the legacy of anyone's HBCU, because they were important then and they're still important today. I would not be who I am. I don't think I would have the same type of confidence that I have if I did not go to an HBCU where my professors, they told us, you, especially in the journalism department, say your full name and correct anyone who doesn't say it the right way, who doesn't say it correctly. Like, they really put that confidence in us. And so it was that wanting to be able to spread the word about and spark conversation amongst parents and their children about HBCUs. Also, I live in Ohio, where we have 2 HBCUs here, Wilberforce and Central State, but not a lot of the students really, or parents neither really know much about HBCUs here. And I thought, we need to bring a little bit more awareness, but we could do that through fashion. So fashion is kind of like the tool to build leaders and lifelong legacy. And another thing is I really wanted to be licensed. I wanted to be able to make sure I was giving back to the schools and not just taking from them. Because when you are licensed, for example, with A&T, 12% of each of the profit from each product will go back to the school. So that's going to help with their endowment funds and extending their legacy. And I remember, so I was a foster child growing up, and I remember, even though I grew up in North Carolina, my parents were from New York City. And so I remember the state of New York paying my way to college. Mm-hmm. And I remember them giving me a laptop. This was like 2005, 2006. I had a laptop and I had all these other goodies that they gave me for my freshman year in college. And I remember thinking, like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give back one day to some other students who want to go to college, who are in need. I'm going to find a way to give back to them. And so my company, we do have a 501c3 nonprofit. It's the HBCU Legacy Scholarship Fund. And so we, raise funds to be able to give money to students. And so those are the two ways I am giving back through this business.
I love that. So it's extending a legacy beyond just people wearing the clothes, being able to have their children in it, but giving back and in the sense of like sending people to school essentially, which
is
commendable, and targeting back to HBCUs, which is important. So what's the difference, and you alluded to it a little bit earlier, between having a license doing business with the schools outside of them getting a portion? Like, what's your ROI? Are you able to get funding from the schools? Like, how is that structure set up versus someone just saying, I want to start this clothing line and just sell merchandise?
No, so it's you're not getting funding from the school to do it. You're creating. So basically, it's like you're using someone's name, and so you have to. So any college or any product or a sports team or whatever, if you're using their name and their logos, then it's very wise and ethical to make sure that you are doing it the right way, which is to be licensed. And so, I'm essentially, whoever is purchasing from me, essentially they're also giving back to the schools, because some of that money does have to go back to, in the form of royalties, goes back to the schools. So the school's not giving you anything, you're paying to use their license. Okay. Yeah.
So for anybody watching, make sure you're ethical. I think that's the number one rule in business, is to be ethical, because it all comes full circle. We know this thing called karma. So give credit where credit's due, and don't worry about, a percentage being taken away from the business, because that percentage that's taken away is going to a good cause, and it's always going to come back to you 3-4 times over. So don't worry about it. Don't be an insecure episode scandal, because that was something where with the AKAs that happened in the insecure episode with the branding of the clothing or something. I remember seeing it on social media. I'm not sure,
but see, I think we were kind of split on that, because not all, because she had the colors on, but she didn't have. I don't think she had on AKA or anything. That would have been one thing. Like, okay, you cannot be rocking the leathers if you're not one. But
right.
Okay, for me and a lot of my other stories, we viewed it as they actually kind of, they're showing who Alpha Kappa Alpha is. Like, we're fine with it, So it's kind of giving credit, putting us on the. We don't really need to be put on the map because everyone knows who we are. But you know what I mean?
Right. But showing love, love.
So I wasn't mad at it.
Right. Yeah.
It gets wearing the letters if you ain't really won, but for the sake of the show.
Yes, for sure. So, talk to us about, what was your first product that you launched? And then how was that experience? Was it like, oh my God, I know I can do this? Or was it a scary moment? Like, this is really happening? Like, what was your first product and how did that feel?
Yes. So the very first products that I launched, it was 2 different products at one time. And it was a denim jacket with a removable hood. And it was embroidered on the back with the school logo. I wish I would have. Oh, actually, I have one right here. I have, actually, good. It was, I just happened to have a stack of clothes. I was going through some stuff.
Oh, good.
It was, the first one was the Aggie one, though.
I love this.
Yeah, these little toddler jackets.
So fresh.
And you could just like zip the hoods off if they didn't want to wear them that way. And then these came out together at the same time. So these little toddler girl sequin denim jackets.
I love that.
Yeah, those were the very first 2 items I did. And when I did those, there were some parents who were like, oh, I love the jackets. Because at first it was just, we were doing a pandemic. So it was just my toddlers that I could use at home to be fit models. I couldn't use anybody else. We were on lockdown. So once we got off lockdown, I was able to extend that into the adult jacket. So it was like mommy and me and daddy and me. And that's really how I started adding in the adult clothes, because I wanted to do something for the kids. But when the parents were like, oh, I wish I had a matching denim jacket like that, I started doing, I was like, well, let's just make this a whole mommy and me and daddy and me thing. Right. Yeah. And so then I launched those. I wasn't scared. I was actually really excited because I was like, no one has this. So like, no one has it. So I'm excited. Like, I'm putting something out that's different, something that's new. on the, for kids in the HBCU scene. And I'm excited about it. Of course, it's, sometimes there can be a little bit of imposter syndrome that will try to kick in and rear its ugly head when you post stuff onto your social media. You're like, how are people going to like respond to this? But for the most part, it was a great response. And we've, done pop-up shops, and I've also vended at homecoming last year. And so those were very good experiences. And I realized that there were other things that the adults wanted. Like, for example, I have this really cute, like, sequin bomber jacket, and it's $20. And adults wanted this one too. And I was like, okay, I have to get this made for them as well. And then we added on some sweatshirts because people did want sweatshirts, but I didn't want them just to be heat pressed. So they're all embroidered, and they're really nice as well. I can show you one of those. I'm glad I have these clothes right here.
Good. And what's the price point like, and how were you able to like price it out? Like, what was the process in thinking about what you wanted to price these things?
Yeah. So when it came to the pricing, I made sure that, I actually worked with a business coach at that time, and I wanted to make sure I was including the what it took to have them manufactured, the amount, that would took to have them shipped here, that needs to be included, so that can be covered. And then shipping and everything. So one tip I will say is that a lot of people, they do like for shipping to be included. So if you can include that into your pricing, then go ahead and do that. And then you don't have to add on shipping at the end. Sometimes people get to the cart, you're like, man, I got to put the shipping on too.
I'm that person. I have $120 in the cart, easy. And then it's like, ship it $5.95. I'm like, no, walk away.
Yeah. So, I wanted to make sure that I was getting a profit. And one good rule of thumb that I actually heard from Justin, he said to do however much it costs for you to have it made, do that times 2.5, like 2.5 times, and get your pricing. And that is really close to like what my pricing is.
Okay. So if you're watching, whatever it costs to make the items, 2.5 times that should be the price point. So don't hesitate to charge your value, charge your worth, because people will pay for it. If they see the value, they'll pay for it. And to your point earlier, you're literally in a lane all by yourself when you created this business. There was no one doing this. This concept wasn't thought of by anyone else. So kudos to you for doing it. Now, fast forward 2023. Have you seen anyone pop up in the scene with this similar concept? And if so, like, how do you keep pace just to stay on track, just to be in your own lane and not worry about so much of the imposter syndrome, or, how am I going to stay ahead of the target?
Yeah, so it's funny that you asked. I have kind of seen people now they're adding on like some kids sweatshirts or kids things. I'm like, okay, well, good for you. That's fine. It's still mine is still mine, and it's still different. I have, my style of doing it. You have yours, and so that's fine with me. But I have seen it. I've even seen people kind of, now it's like more people are using the word legacy. It's like, it's like, but no, I think that you always kind of have to know what's out there, and you do, and as a businesswoman or businessman, you have to know what your competition is and what people are looking for, and kind of like surveying your people. If that means going to your competitors' page, and I say competitors, because they are the other people who, your customer may shop from, so you may want to check and see what the customers are like and what they're loving, and I'm not saying you have to copycat it, but you can make something similar. Yep. And so, and that was one reason, I said, okay, maybe I should add on some sweatshirts, but let's give it a twist. Let's not make them a heat press. Like, let's make them a higher quality. Let's make sure that they're embroidered, and they're going to be they'll last, that the quality of the sweatshirt is good. They won't fade in the dryer or have the little balls and stuff on it after you shrink. So it's fine, if there's someone out there that may be doing something similar, just figure out how you can make it your own, and how to tweak it and to give it the quality that you want it to have.
For sure. And I think something that you did, which was incredibly smart in the beginning, which a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm trying to get out of saying a lot, because I say a lot, and it's like, it's not a lot, but some entrepreneurs do, is they come up with this great idea, they create the name, they create the branding, and they wait until the last minute for trademarking.
Oh,
And like you said in the beginning of the podcast, that was one of the first things you did was you looked into a trademark lawyer, a trademark attorney, to make sure you had all of your eggs lined up and everything was in order. And I think that's incredibly important, especially now fast forward, where in 2023, you're starting to see people using legacy and things that are very similar to the brand. So now you had that protection from day one. And so I think that's really important for anyone that's watching, that's thinking about, being an entrepreneur. You're in an entrepreneurial space right now. If you don't have your trademarks in order, go back to the drawing board and get that done, because those are the things that are going to protect your brand in the long run. And I know Brendan always, talks about him and his partner back in the day. They had Society Original Products and they created the original jogger. Like that would the jogger is theirs, but because they didn't know about trademark and patents, all this stuff back then, didn't do it. And so now fast forward, joggers are huge, right? The little scrunch at the bottom, and like they're not benefiting from it. So key point, very important to make sure I can look at it. And then, to another point you made earlier is no one else is you, and no one else is the authenticity of your brand, or no one else can create it the same way you can. So for you are watching, don't be afraid to have a like partner. And when I say like partner, a like competitor, right? Because again, people buy people, and they're buying into Shalana. They're not buying necessarily just into HBCU legacy fashion. They're buying into who she is and her story. So know that and own that. And, I really just commend you on this journey. Like, I'm excited. I'm like, okay, I don't have any children, but I have godkids. So, I can definitely look into it.
Right. Yes. I was going to say that's true, because there's so many different types of HBCU apparel brands. And, some are targeted more towards students who are in college. I'm targeting the parents and, their little ones and stuff. For me, it's about them having conversations and teaching them at a young age what an HBCU is and what, their school is. You can hear my kids screaming Aggie pride and everything. And so, that's why it is for me. It's more than just a fashion brand, and yours can be more than just a fashion brand. It's whatever you want to make it.
Mm-hmm. So looking back in retrospect, what are like the top, let's say, 2 things that you learned through this process that were like aha moments, that were highlights? Like it might have been a huge pitfall at the time or a huge step back, but you learned so much from that it just was helping you on the trajectory to get forward to this position that you are right now.
Okay, so let me think. There's always some moments there, right? And I definitely think that the manufacturing is, oh gosh, I have a good one. Okay, so you can't skip a step in this. You cannot skip a step with the fashion, because I was testing out another manufacturer. Actually, I tested them out, got samples, like their work. So they made some jackets for me, because at the time, the first manufacturer I used, so I'm using them again now because I have way bigger orders. I'm going into retail, but they did mostly big brands, retail, Justice, all those. So they were doing me a favor during the pandemic to get me started because of my mentor, having the relationship with them. But after that, they were like, oh, it's not really worth it for us to do the small batch order or whatever. But now that I'm going into the department store, they're like, okay, yeah, we can do that. That's, I guess, worth their time. And so, and their stuff is great. So, but in between the time when I needed when I wanted to start making the denim jackets for adults, I couldn't use them. And so I was like, well, let me find another manufacturer. I did look into 2 different manufacturers. One I found, and I loved their work. And so I did get the sample, went through the process. But when it was time to do some sweatshirts last year, I wanted some right before A&T's homecoming, which was last October. And I was like, you know what? How hard can it be to make a sweatshirt? Like I don't have to get a sample. Like I'm just going to send them. I didn't do a tech pack. I was like, it's a sweatshirt. Like I'm going to tell them what logo I want up there, and they can just make the sweatshirts and do the logos. Well, you have to be very, very clear when you're dealing with people overseas and they have a different language than you. Maybe they're smaller built than Americans. And so I had them make sweatshirts for me, and they got almost all of them right, except when it came to the kids' sizes. They were like the 10, 12s or the 14, 16s. The sleeves were too short. I was like, what in the world is going on here? And I didn't catch it until one of my sisters, who is one of my closest friends, thank God she was the one that caught it. She ordered 3 sweatshirts for her sons, and her oldest son, she's also in fashion. She is a stylist. Shout out to Amber Riley. She's a Riley Styling on Instagram. So she's a stylist, and she can sew and she can do all those things. But she's in North Carolina, and so she FaceTimed me. She was like, Shalana, the sleeves are off. I'm measuring this up to one of Preston's other sweatshirts that's the same size, and these sleeves are off. And I was like, what? And I'm thinking, like, if they're off for this sweatshirt, that means they're off for all the sizes for all the schools. And that was my fault, because I wanted to rush and get sweatshirts made before homecoming, because I was going to be vending. And I didn't go through the whole process. So you cannot skip the steps if you're getting something custom made and is overseas. You have to create a tech pack. You have to get a sample. You have to wait for the sample to actually come in and do a fit session so that you can make sure all the measurements are right, because them sleeves was right up to here and it should have been down here. So
just roll it up, baby. Just roll it up.
And even though they fixed it, they didn't fix it in time for homecoming, because they couldn't. Homecoming was going to be in like 2 weeks, and there was no way possible for them to get those to me in those particular sizes by then. So that was a big lesson that I learned. Like, girl, you cannot be skipping these steps. My mentor was like, Shalana, you already knew you weren't supposed to skip those steps. You can't do it. And I was like, I did know, but I just figured, oh, it's a sweatshirt. It can't be that hard. I'm sure they made sweatshirts before. And yeah, they have. But like I said, people in other countries may be smaller built, so that was one big moment. Yes. Another one, I will say, on a I guess maybe like administrative side, making sure you have like all of your systems and your processes, like all that documented, so that when you're growing your team, or you have someone on your team, they know exactly what to do. So you want to make sure anytime you're doing anything, whether it's like uploading something to your Shopify site or creating a newsletter, like document every single step and make sure you have that, because you just want people to know what, if you're hiring help, whether it's hiring help from overseas or help that's local or whatever, people just need to know what they're doing, because you're going to get frustrated when you're giving out directions, and they'll be frustrated. And then it's like nothing, you're just wasting time and money because nothing's happening. So I had to learn to make sure, like, okay, if you're running this business, you got to run this like a real business. Like, whatever you learned in corporate America, you got to apply it to here. So make sure you do have like some SOPs for your business and have all of that, your standard operating procedures, all that stuff written out. It can even be videos. Like if you need to make it like a video, or you need a screen record on your computer to show everyone on your team how to do a certain task, then do that. But make sure you have it written out.
I love that. Really important points, y'all. SOPs, your standard operating procedures in place. And also make sure you send your tech pack if you're getting items made, because sometimes what we think is easy or simple to do, the other person may not have the same thought or mindset, and it may not be the same, specs and stuff for them, especially if you're working overseas. I love that. And SOPs, even now, you can screen record your process, send it to ChatGPT, and they can create a whole SOP procedure manual for it. It's insane what you can do.
What's it called?
I'll send you the video, because I have you. I'm looking at your page right here on my phone. I'll send you the video. I found it last night because I was doing some research, and I'm like, this is insane. You can literally video record your SOPs and send it to ChatGPT, and it'll do it for you. I'll send it to you, because
thank you.
Change in 2023, like we don't have to work as hard as we did before, which is nice, right? Yeah. It works, but so something else I wanted to ask you about, which I think is really important for especially fashion brand vendors when they start out. Vending when they start out. I see a lot of people, especially here in LA, they'll do pop-up shops, or they'll go vend at a local flea market. And I get both sides of the coin. I get some people who are like, yes, this was valuable. I earned some money from it. It made sense. And then I get other people who are like, it cost me more to vend than what I actually made. So what are some of like your tips for people who are looking to go vend at flea markets or, anywhere, or pop up to a school and vend? Like, what should they have in terms of their like checklist of things to make sure they have an order, or even does it make sense financially for them to do it? Does that make sense? I know.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense, because I always count the cost myself, because what you need to make sure is that your target audience is there. Your ideal, customer avatar is at that place that you're going to plan to vend at. So it doesn't make sense if you sell. For me, it wouldn't make sense, because their stuff is always happening here in Columbus, Ohio. But it doesn't make sense for me to go to Polaris Mall for their Christmas pop-up and sell HBCU clothes here because I don't have the same audience, especially for the schools that I have clothing for. It's just not enough people from those schools in this city for me to go and do a pop-up there. Like I would imagine it'd be the same, like maybe somewhere in LA. I don't know. Like if I could just be selling a whole bunch of HBCU clothes in, I don't know, Bel Air or wherever. I don't know. I mean, you just need to know like where you're at and who your target audience is. If you are selling HBCU clothes, then of course go to the homecoming games and those types of pop-ups, anything that's HBCU related, but not everything that's HBCU related, because someone could make up their own little event for HBCUs and it might be a new event and maybe there's only 100 people that's going to come and you paid all of this money. You have to do what makes sense. So it does not make sense for you to go unless you've never, like, unless nobody knows you at all. I'll say this. This is what I'll say. When I did wedding planning, the first year I started, I did go to a bridal show because it gave me brand recognition, but still it was a bridal show. It wasn't just some random type of event. I wanted to meet other vendors there because I wanted them to know who I was, so I could, have opportunity to work with them, a photographer or a caterer. But I knew that I was very, very new to the industry and that I might not book a whole bunch of brides just off of this show, but they can take some of my handouts. I can introduce myself. I can meet and mingle with some of the other vendors. So I think it's about what you want to get out of it, number one. But also keep in mind that you don't want to go where your target audience isn't. If they're not there, then it doesn't really make sense. You should still have even if you are new, you should still have like a target audience that's going to be there, or
Right.
something like that, because otherwise I wouldn't deal with wasting the money to like bring all my products. That means you might have to get a U-Haul, you got to get the tent, you got to do all this stuff, but your ideal client isn't there. So what's the point of you being there? Like these people aren't going to buy from you. So just make sure your target audience is there.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I don't want to skip over the fact that you say you're going into retail.
Yeah,
we're not going to skip over that.
No, speaking of pop-ups, that's how this company found me. We actually are starting production now and got all my purchase orders in for them this week and last week. And so I think I want to just wait and announce when I'm actually in the stores, because the clothing will go into stores July and August.
Okay.
And so, but it is a department store, mostly in the Southeast. And I'm excited because I'm going to meet so many of them. And they saw me. So I went to the Aggie Eagle Classic last year in September of 2022. Drove down there. So this is an example of me, going out of my way to go to a pop-up shop. I just got back from Dominican Republic. We went there. We were it was our anniversary, plus my mother-in-law was also getting married. And so that was August. When we were coming back, the end of August, actually, that weekend when we were coming back, my husband is in graduate school, so he was going to Florida to do some residency or something there. So anyway, basically, all the kids have been watched by all the people who can watch our kids in Ohio. And I knew about this event that was happening. And I was like, man, I got to figure out who can watch these kids so I can drive down there, because my husband's going to be in Florida. But we just got back from DR, so nobody was available to watch them. But I was like, maybe I don't need to go. But then I was like, no, I need to go because I got this Aggie gear I need to sell. I got this Eagle stuff. They're all going to be in one place. I'm not going to be able to go to Central's homecoming, but I'm going to go to A&T. So this would be the best opportunity to get the North Carolina Central Eagles in front of me and in front of my product. And so I was like, I'm going to go. So I did what I had to do and got on the road. We drove down, me and someone else who was helping me. She drove down with me, and we started selling the clothes. Someone came to the tent, and I was looking over because we had an iPad to collect emails, but she was like writing her email down or something. I'm like, hey, the iPad's over here. Right. And she's like, oh, this is for something else. And so then when I was done with the customer, she was like, oh, this lady was a buyer for so-and-so. And she was like, she said their stores don't have any HBCU kids clothes in it. And so, but they have like some HBCU adult clothes. So then they came back over later with the VP of the department. And she was like, hey, where do you manufacture? Like, just asking all these questions. She's looking at my clothes. And she said, yeah, we need some. I've been looking for a vendor to do HBCU kids' clothes for us. She's like, we can get you in here fall 2023. I'm like, what is going on? So then we started having meetings, and the rest is history. So yes,
Right.
yes, go where your target audience is, even if it does mean to sacrifice,
Right.
So we definitely sacrificed. I'm like, if I wouldn't have gone, I'm glad I did push myself to go, because that's where they found me.
That's amazing. Congrats. Kudos to you. So y'all will have to stay tuned to get more information about what's about to go down this department store for HBCU Legacy Fashion. So with that, I think that was a perfect segue into, tell us where we can learn more about HBCU Legacy Fashion and Shalana, and stay in touch and stay in tune so we can figure out what department store we can roll up on in July, August.
So, okay, I am Shalana Fultz on Instagram, and the company is HBCU Legacy Fashion on Instagram, Facebook. Website is hbculegacyfashion.com. My website is shalanafultz.com. And yes, so send me a message if you heard the podcast here, and just let me know, and I'll definitely write you back, and we can chat, and I'll keep in touch with you, letting you know where HBCU Legacy Fashion will be.
Amazing. I love that. Again, congrats on all the success, and there's much more to come. I know, I feel it. You have such a great energy, such a great soul. So the sky is not the limit. It's just the view for this brand and for you and your children and the legacy that you're building. So shouts out. Super amazing. Listen, y'all were here for another amazing episode of the Imperfect Action Show, where we talk to 6, 7, 8-figure entrepreneurs about their journey, some strategies, some challenges, some pitfalls, and how they are moving in their business in 2023 and beyond. So thank you for being here today. Happy Monday. Y'all do something amazing for yourself, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.